So we're going to go ahead and kick off the show, and I'll be interacting with you guys in the comment section. We'll do a little bit differently tonight. Jordan is in the middle of traveling from work right now, and his audio is being a little weird, so he can't be on right at this moment. So we'll just keep it with me and you guys. We'll talk a little fall camp. We'll talk a little weigh-ins. I'll go through the list of guys and some of the standout guys as far as weigh-ins, some of the guys of note that kind of stood out from a body composition standpoint and kind of where they were versus where they weighed in this past Wednesday. So TJ Moore, for one, obviously big-time freshman wide receiver. Haven't seen him on campus to this point. Obviously got the first time. Some media members got to see him practice on Thursday. Obviously some good returns out of him, but he weighed in at 198 pounds. Previously he was 190. Cade Klubnik up to 210 from 205. So making some good progress with him there. TJ Parker, he's up to 264 from 255. Let's see. Tyler Brown, around the same weight. He weighed in at 181, so just 1 pound above what he was already listed on the roster previously. Phil Maffa dropped a couple pounds down to 228 from 230. Adam Randall up to 231, so a bit bigger from 225 where he was listed before. Jake Brenningstool up to 243. Dabo Sweeney talked a little bit about Jake Brenningstool and his time with the media and talked about his body composition and how he's really just coming to his own, and he's excited to see what he's going to be able to put on the field this year, especially with that big frame that he's really started to fill out. It's going to be exciting to see what he's able to do with that added weight. John Sarian said, Randall is said to be all muscle. Yes, absolutely. 231 pounds. I mean, he's going to be a haul to deal with on that outside should he be able to stay healthy. Excuse me, guys. All right. Let's go continue on here. Jaden Lucas, another guy that's been plagued by injury, unfortunately. Just haven't seen him on the field as much as we would like to in past seasons. But he's down to 196 from 200, previously listed. Obviously, he's a guy that can definitely contribute to this team and be a big piece of that defensive backfield if he can stay healthy, and look forward to all these guys really staying healthy. Dabo was actually asked, about I think he was specifically asked about Walker Parks and his injury history and how much that he had gone through, and he answered, excuse me, got somewhat like emotional about some of these guys and the trials that they've gone through with different injuries and back-to-back injuries and just constantly dealing with things. A guy like Troy Stellato comes to mind. Walker Parks comes to mind. Adam Randall comes to mind. Like guys like that have just been plagued by injury and saying that he was truly praying for his team and hoping that these guys would be able to put it all together this season and truly stay healthy as a group, as a unit, as a cohesive team. So let's hope that will be one of the hallmark calling cards for this Clemson team this season, is just being able to stay healthy, which is something Clemson hasn't been able to say as a whole team-wise in quite some time, unfortunately. So Troy Stellato, another guy that's been plagued by injury. He's down to 185, previously 190. Peter Woods, a lot of talk about Peter Woods this season and what weight he would be carrying coming into this season, and he weighed in at 319. Some people expected him to be a little bit less than that previously. I think he was, let's see, where was he? 315 before. Excuse me. Now he's up to 319. And, I think one of the key things that Dabo talked about specifically with Peter Woods was just body composition. And with a lot of these guys, it's body composition. He said he's extremely lean. He can run. He can make all the plays. He can play literally every position on the defensive line, which I think is really important because I think at any given time this season he will be asked to play every position along that defensive line at some point in time during the season. So I think it's important that he still kept some of his size and some of his bulk to be able to play inside when he needs to and still be effective in that short run game, but also lean and quick enough to where he can still be a weapon on the outside and he can hold, contain, and he can make the plays and have the athletic ability to move on the outside like he would need to be at that defensive end position. It's a really tough position to be in for Peter Woods. But, according to Dabo, according to a lot of the coaching staff, he has a unique ability to be able to hold that and have the body and the strength to work inside and then the speed and the athleticism to also work on the outside. So that's a lot easier said than done. But it looks to be that he held up his size quite a bit and that, he's got his body composition in a play. I mean, Dabo said that, he's leaner than some guys that are 280. So he's got his body composition in a place to where he's going to be able to, really affect the game all along that defensive line. And that's going to be very important for the Tigers going forward. He's going to be one of the key cogs in the wheel as far as this defense goes and how effective and dominant they are up front. He's going to be one of those leaders along with TJ Parker, right? So can't wait to see these guys just get in there and just really start performing and start bringing some of those younger guys along. A Cade Denhoff, an AJ Hoffler, a Jaheim Lawson. Bring some of those young guys along with them and get them to grow and get them to step up into those secondary roles, into those roles where, we're going to need that depth as the season goes on because, as you guys know, we move into a 12-team playoff. And what that means is, if you play well throughout the season and you win the games you're supposed to win and, you go on and win the ACC championship game and you're in the 12-team playoff, you can play well into, January. You can play up to, I think, 17 games now. If you go to the final game. So, I mean, you got to prepare for a really long season. And part of preparation for that is you have to build quality depth. And if you're not building the quality depth, those first guys that run out there, yes, it's very important that they are talented and that they can, produce at a very high level. But those guys that run out there after them are just as important, if not more important, as the season goes on, to give those guys breathers, to make sure that they're not overexerting themselves and causing injury because they're playing every single snap of every single game, right? That's just not a sustainable way to go through a football season. It's too physical of a sport to take that many snaps. Let me get through this list, and then I'll get to your guys' comments. Give me a couple more minutes. I'm going to get through this weigh-in list, and then I'll get to your guys' comments before we move on to the next topic. Excuse me, guys. All right, moving right along. Olsen Pat Henry stayed right around the same as he was before. Brian Wesco, he is up to about 182. So he goes from 170 to 182. I mean, the guy, we obviously saw what he did in the spring game. We saw what he was able to do as far as, his ability to catch the ball and move in open space, his ability to make acrobatic catches. Obviously, he picked up the offense very well from a mental standpoint. Obviously, everybody knew coming in that Brian Wesco would need to put on a little bit of weight and bulk up a bit, and he's already done that. Put on 12 pounds already in his first offseason. So look for big things out of Brian Wesco Jr. Cade Klubnik talked about Brian Wesco at the ACC Media Days, talked about how much chemistry that he's built with Brian Wesco this season and how excited he is to see him out on the field this year making plays for the Tigers. I think Jordan's popped in for us here. Let me see if we can get him on here. Hey, Jordan, how you doing, man?
Yeah, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. And this has been a wonderful day.
Yeah, that's all good.
where are we at? What did I miss?
I'm still going through the weigh-in list right now. Just kind of talking through some of the guys. I'm just scrolling the list and kind of naming out guys that catch my eye. Really, we've talked about Antonio Williams. We've talked about T.J. Moore. T.J. Parker went from 155 to 264. Let's see. Who else did we talk? We talked about Adam Randall. Jaden Lucas, Olsen Pat Henry, Brian Wesco. I was just talking about Brian Wesco when you popped on. So that's who we've talked about so far.
Yeah, well, I mean, you hit on Bryant Wesco. I mean, what jumps out to you is, when he came in as a early enrollee, that was always the biggest thing was his size. And, you knew the playmaking ability was there. We saw it throughout the spring, but it was like we knew that if he was going to be an actual contributor for Clemson this year, he was going to have to, hit that weight room. And I think he's up to 188 now. Came in like below 170. I believe. So, I mean, I think you're seeing, that's pretty incredible growth and, great work by the strength staff. But it's massive for his prospects as far as being an early contributor. And, I was very pleased to hear that. I'm really pleased with the wide receiver room in general. I think they showed a lot of promise. Just based off of the gains and just physically, we'll talk about it, what the kind of the standouts from day one of camp. But the receivers, like, they look the part, and it's not just like, they're eating a lot, but they're not putting on good weight. No, they're bulking up and they look really physically impressive. And having Bryant Wesco in that conversation is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge deal. And that's one of the things that I've kind of been harping on before you hopped on, Jordan, was, the kind of everybody really talked about it, but Dabo talked about it as well, talking about just the body composition standpoint and getting your body in a place where, it's mass. You got the proper mass, but the muscle and you're leaned out enough to where you can be athletic. So I think it's obvious that the Clemson nutrition staff and the players have bought in to the program that they have going on, and everybody's trying to get better from that standpoint. And it's pretty clear with some of these weigh-in results. So we'll continue to go down the list. I'll highlight some standouts. Defensive end Jaheim Lawson went from 240 to 251. So that's a huge deal for him. Obviously, Jaheim Lawson came in kind of a leaner, smaller guy, a guy that you could really use in the pass rushing game. He's definitely a pass rushing specialist. That's kind of his strength. But getting his body to a point where he can compete on those other downs, on those run downs, where he's keeping contained and things like that is important. And he's definitely taken a big step this offseason in making that happen. So shout out to him for getting his body in a better place. Ronan Hannafin puts on 5 pounds, up to 215. Wade Woodaz goes from 230 to 235. Excuse me. I'm trying not to cough here, guys. Let's see. I'm just scrolling down the list. Jay Haynes. Wow, that's a big jump. It goes from 185 to 200. So obviously that one stands out quite a bit. Get Jordan's thoughts on Jay Haynes. Well, what do you think about that jump from Jay Haynes all the way up to 200 pounds?
Yeah, is my camera on? Like, I'm seeing nothing but a black screen on my screen.
I see a black screen, but we can hear you fine.
Okay, all right, whatever. At this point, my phone is not wanting to cooperate with me. But no, like I think it's a massive deal. I mean, it's kind of similar to a little bit similar to Brian Westbrook in that, we knew like he gives a boost of explosiveness and athleticism. And, Jay Haynes, he was a guy that Dabo has talked about throughout the offseason as a guy that they wanted to get on the field last year at points, but they couldn't trust him to stay healthy. And, he dealt with different injuries throughout the year. And so him bulking up and getting bigger was a massive thing for the running back room. Because, if he's going to, step into a bigger role, whether it's, whether he's RB2 or is a 2A, 2B type situation with him and Adams, I don't know. But, he's a guy that they clearly want to get on the field. And so, him getting up to 200 pounds and just being sturdier is big. The hope is that he's gained that weight, but he's also kept the explosiveness because he does.
Right.
He was kind of an unknown commodity when he signed, but when you go back and watch his tape back in Alabama, he was a really, really explosive playmaker for his high school. It was a small, like 2A school, but he really showed out, and that was kind of the draw and kind of why Clemson liked him as a late take. And he just needs to be able to stay healthy to bring that to this offense, because if he does, then I'm pretty high on what he can bring to the table this year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just an eye-popping number. I mean, 15 pounds over an offseason, that's pretty impressive. But you would hope that obviously he put the weight on the right way, and he's good from a body composition standpoint where he needs to be. And the hope is with a guy like Jay Haynes that he didn't lose that explosive step, because that's really what Clemson needs out of him, right? When you got a guy like Phil Moffitt that's a big bruiser type of back. Obviously, I'm not saying Phil Moffitt's not athletic. He obviously is. Phil Moffitt can do anything out of the backfield that you need him to do. He can run, he can catch, he can split out wide if you need him to. He's the total package when it comes to an RB1. But to have that change of pace guy with a bit more speed, a bit more explosiveness, the guy you would peg most often would be a Jay Haynes. But unfortunately for him, he's just not been able to stay healthy. Even this spring, he wasn't able to stay healthy. So because of that, you got to kind of look and, is Amume, is he going to step up? Is it going to be Keith Adams Jr.? Is it going to be, who's going to step into that kind of RB2 role and, be the guy behind Phil Moffitt? And you look to Jay Haynes to have it. And obviously he has changed his body. We'll see if he has maintained that explosiveness. And I think that'll be important going forward, obviously. Continuing to go down the list quickly so we can move on. I'm just looking for people that kind of pop out from a number standpoint.
Have we talked about Ashton Hampton? He was a guy that I think, coming in, I was really high on him as a recruit, and him coming in at 200 pounds was really eye-opening. I mean, I think he's a guy that potentially is more ready to play than even, maybe the coaching staff was expecting. He's a guy that has a lot of positional versatility. I think he's going to play a lot of nickel in his time at Clemson. And, I think he's a guy you could get on the field in certain situations. Just having him at that weight is a big deal. And I mean, they've talked about kind of how impressive he is, and he's come in and been really, really, he's hit the ground running essentially. And that's kind of exciting, because he was kind of he was an underrated pull, I think. Beating out Florida State for his services was a really big deal. And it's just another one of those Mike Reed evaluations that I think is going to pay dividends. So, Ashton Hampton at that size, I think is really good. I mean, that's kind of where you want your nickel to be. And he still, he can run. So that makes it, or he makes him a lot more intriguing as far as, a true freshman that could, step in and contribute right away in that DB room.
Heaven Brown Schuler, from 290 up to 312 pounds. So putting on some good weight there, good for the defensive tackle room. Other guys from that defensive tackle room. Um, what's I reading about?
I know Vic Burley is up to 330, I think, or something like that. He was like, or
Yeah,
I
Trey
don't,
Williams up to 314. Where's Vic Burley at? Vic Burley's up to 332.
don't know if I love that, to be honest. That if we're going to talk about ones that like weigh-ins that I wasn't excited about, Vic
Yeah,
Burley is kind of one of them. They've talked about kind of they want to get him on the field, but he's kind of a work in progress because he's so behind. He got so behind from the ACL tear. So maybe they do want him at that weight, and maybe it's good weight, because I didn't get a chance to see him. But he is a guy that I'm extremely high on, and as far as the long term future of this defensive line room. I mean, he was a 5-star, so that's not saying much, but that was kind of one of the ones where I was like, oh wow, I didn't expect him to balloon that much. I didn't think he needed to gain weight. And Peter Woods also gained weight, which is like, okay, well, he's definitely going to play inside a lot, even though he's moving out to edge. Like you're still going to have a lot of utility for him in the interior. So
yeah. I mean, Peter Woods, he's up to 319. But reading some of the media notes and the media members seeing him in practice, they're like, that dude doesn't look 300 pounds. Like, so clearly from a body composition standpoint, he's carrying it very well. According to them, he's very lean. So doesn't look like he's carrying too much there. So, I mean, how he does it, I have no idea.
yeah. I mean, you got to. I mean, it's crazy how these athletes carry this weight sometimes. I mean, you look at a guy like Adam Randall, like at 231, and you're like, but it's like all muscle. He's like 4%
Right, yeah. You do
body
build
fat.
like DK Metcalf over here.
Yeah,
Solid muscle. A lot of the offensive linemen went down in weight, not by much, anywhere from 5 to 8 pounds or so. But most of the guys that you would project to be starting offensive linemen this season went down in weight. So our Ryan Lithicum, I think, is a key piece for the offensive line this year. Right, he's down to 302. Most of the other ones went down as well. Let's see. I'm trying to get their weights. Peyton Page down to 307. Shout out to
yeah,
Peyton Page. I
and
mean,
that was pretty incredible. I mean, it was cool to see him
that
get
dude
that
was
shot.
that dude was you know
He was what almost 400 pounds at one
he was
point.
400 pounds at one time. Yeah, when he was
Yeah,
at Clemson. Nice 307. So shout out to him. That's putting in the work, man. That's not easy.
I mean,
Uh,
and he's a guy that's going to be in that rotation, and he's going
yeah,
to be expected to take a bigger role. So that's massive. And it's a testament to testament to the strength staff and Peyton and his work ethic, as far as just getting his body, because now he's one of the senior guys in the room with Tyler Davis gone, Rukaroro gone. I mean, this is he's the old guy now. Him and Trey
right.
Williams, like in Demonte Capehart, they're the veterans of the group. So they got to lead by example, and that's pretty. That was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Blake Miller up to 314. Ronan O'Connell down to 306. Marcus Tate up or down to 316. Excuse me. Tristan Lay down to 309. Champ Pendergrass up to 297. Walker Parks down to 304. Dietrich Pennington up to 355. So big group of offensive linemen there, obviously changing their bodies.
Yeah, and Dietrich Pennington is a guy that another guy you're kind of really interested because, it's just he's a guy that they've talked about so many times, in multiple off seasons about getting his body right. Um, him going up in weight, they didn't seem to be concerned about it. They seemed to say that it was good weight. So, that's what you hope for at least. So it would be cool if he could factor into the depth in rotation, at some point this year. But I'm really intrigued about that, because it's like, where do you slot him? Because especially when the rest of the guys are so low at this point along the offensive line, and I think that was intentional. I felt like last year it wasn't that the guys we had weren't strong enough; it's that they were, some of them were so big they couldn't move their feet. That was one thing that really stood out about the offensive line play last year. And what they say, slow feet don't eat. And we just had a lot of guys that weren't very quick-footed in an offensive scheme that needs you to be quick-footed, especially when you're doing those gap schemes and counter and when you have guys pulling. That's guys, you got to be able to move your feet. And we had issues in pass protection, on at tackle and on the interior at times, because guys weren't were slow. And that's something that Matt Luke is definitely been hitting the ground running with this group. And as far as, like, we're not going to be slow-footed, we're not going to be we're not going to get beat to our spot, we're not going to lose our, you get the point. So I think that's kind of the mantra, and kind of the weigh-ins kind of reflect what they're going for this year. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that develops as we get further into fall camp.
Yeah, look, I'm really excited to see what this offensive line is going to be like, and just the cohesive unit that they're going to slowly become as the season moves on. The more I hear, and I guess that's a good transition to stop talking about the weigh-ins and then just transition right into our fall camp preview. And I think one of the common threads, I guess, that you heard, because we got to hear from Dabo Sweeney, we got to hear from, a bunch of different offensive linemen, Marcus Tate, Walker Parks, Blake Miller, Tristan Lay. We got to hear from a big portion of the offensive linemen, as well as Dabo Sweeney, and really get a sense of how they're feeling coming out of summer, how they feel going into fall camp. And so before we get into the media notes and stuff like that, just off of those interviews and stuff, one of the things I wanted to highlight was just the vibe that I get from this offensive line. Now, I'm not sitting here today, what is it, the 2nd of August, 2024, saying that Clemson's offensive line is going to go out there and be some sort of, Michigan offensive line from last season 2.0, or some sort of elite level top 5 offensive line in the country. But there's a recipe in there coming together that I think could, by season's end, become a very special group for this Clemson Tiger and be one of the pivotal keys for this offensive line group turning into something that we've always wanted it to be, right? We've always known that Clemson has the ability to recruit high-level offensive linemen. We have, but we just haven't been able to put it together as a cohesive unit a lot of the times, right? There's always been holes, but hearing the offensive linemen talk about Matt Luke, hearing them talking about them attacking their body composition, them being locked into how they look, to how they feel, to their athleticism, all the way to them talking about being in meetings with Matt Luke and how jacked up and excited he is, and how detail oriented he is. Oh, hey, your hand was slightly off. Oh, you were sitting a little high on that play. You were this, you were that, you were just small little tweaks. That's the difference in a 10-yard play and a tackle for loss, right? So little things like that, and just the things that I hear makes me be very optimistic, maybe cautiously optimistic about where this offensive line can end up um, at season's end.
No, I'm with you. And I mean, I get the same vibe. Like, with Matt Luke, you mentioned how detail oriented he is. That's one thing that I feel like, this group definitely needed. Um, but and not that Thomas Austin wasn't, about details. He was, from, everything I've been told. But like Matt Luke is almost Brent Venables like obsession with the details. Like every single micrometer, like it matters. Like it's like if your hand placement is just a little bit off, he's going to call you out on it. If your feet are not where they're supposed to be by just an inch, he's going to call you out on it. And that's something that people who were at the first day of practice really observed when they were watching the offensive line and go through drills. Matt Luke was very, very particular about, how he wanted things to be done and where they needed to be. And I think that's kind of that's the level of attention to detail that I think this group needs, because sometimes doing the little things right goes a long way. And with this group, and we've talked about how the potential that this group has. This is how you're going to maximize that potential, is by doing the little things right, and that's what Matt Luke has repeatedly shown that he's all about. So that's exciting. Again, we're not saying that this group is going to come out and go push around Georgia on the 31st, but I do think that this, with what you have in the room, you have more than enough to be a very competitive and strong offensive line, especially down the line. So Matt Luke was really, really impressive from everything that I gathered, and just kind of he commanded. His presence was very, very felt throughout the day. So that was exciting to hear.